Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged, a place to find comfort and support as you navigate your mental and emotional well-being. Sit back and relax, unless you're driving, and get ready for this week's hug. So it's our last week with AI. How do you feel about it?
I have learned so much. I'm just really excited for people to get to hear this video series because, again, like it has been such a help to me and like really in time management, organization, and just lots of things I didn't know AI could be used for.
You know, I've had so many conversations more than ever, not because I brought it up, but with just even like people at church, it just comes up. It's such like talking about AI and people saying it's, and it's pretty divisive. It almost feels like you either love it or you absolutely despise it. I mean, is that kind of what I know there's a little middle ground there, but a lot of people,
I think so. And like even the people who love it, a lot of times their first response is, well, it's a little scary. And so even the people who really enjoy it know that there are risks, and that's what we're talking about today.
it is. And I and Michelle too, I had a rough end of the week last week. And in fact, just I don't think it's a bad thing to share because we want people to feel hugged and that we usually record on Saturdays or Sundays. And Michelle wrote me and said, "Hey, can we push it back an hour?" I was like, "Okay, this is God confirmation. I am so grumpy and I do not feel like recording." So we're recording on a Monday, which is unlike us. But we found this podcast. So, um, Michelle, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. We just thought it would be fun we found this podcast about puppies. Now stay with us for a minute because we have a point about these puppies and we'll play, it's 4 minutes, but we're only going to play like 30 seconds or a minute. So let me know if
All
you
right.
don't hear
So, are
it.
you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
We got this conversation, about puppies.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I thought, oh, puppies.
Yeah.
How deep can we go?
Right.
But it's
Yes.
actually really fascinating.
I know. I think it's a great example of
Well,
how much is going on
yeah,
under the surface, even in these very simple,
absolutely.
casual conversations.
Says, listener, this is your conversation.
Yeah.
This is the one that you sent in,
Uh-huh.
and we're going to unpack it together.
Yeah.
So, right off the bat, something that jumped out at me was in this first exchange, person A says, oh, he's just so energetic.
Right.
Do you hear that?
I do.
That little,
So I said,
like,
hesitation.
yeah, slight hesitation and the emphasis on the just.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's subtle,
Yeah.
but it's definitely there. And that kind of tonal shift can suggest a lot of things.
Okay.
Maybe they're trying to be polite,
Yeah.
but actually find the puppy overwhelming.
That's kind of what.
That's happened to all of us, right? Oh, he's just so energetic. And so you all may think that the point we're going to make is like maybe something about how to react when you meet a puppy or how maybe you think your puppy's cute, but not everybody does. But drum roll, that,
Oh, I'm supposed to be doing a drum roll.
yeah, drum roll.
Okay.
That was completely 100% AI generated. Poof. And that's the part that can be scary. Now, it's through a program that Google has called Notebook, and we'll share the link. I mean, I don't know if it's anything that you would be interested in doing, but when Jamie, who was going to record with us, but I'm going to actually ask him, Michelle, to maybe just record a little snippet that we can interject in here. We're on different schedules, so he couldn't be here with us this morning. But he introduced this to me, I don't know, 6 months ago maybe, and I asked it to do a podcast about my stress club. I put some things in there, and for this one, I just said make a podcast about puppies. That's all I said. There's a lot of limitations to it, and I don't know why anyone would want to really use it for a live podcast, but you heard it. I mean, AI generated voices, topic, all of it. And so this is where we are in 2025. And Michelle, you hadn't heard it before. What did you think?
I mean, it would be difficult to identify as not real if you weren't familiar with it. One of the things, because I had heard an AI generated podcast that you had shared with me before, it was on a different topic, but I recognized the voice.
Okay.
And so, but without
It's the
that,
same voices for every single one.
so it's that the
It's
same
the
voices. Okay.
same like
Yeah.
two man woman thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that was the only way I could have really identified that it's not like that it was AI generated.
By the way, I love puppies, but
I love
anyway, that wasn't,
puppies too.
I know, which wasn't the point of the thing, but and then there was one other thing I wanted to tell you as well that I didn't mention to you, Michelle, and it's not exactly AI, um, but we are talking today about safety, about, ethical use, about fakes. And full disclosure, Michelle and I are not experts, and I don't think we need to be experts to have a discussion about this, because if we need to be like experts to pass things along to you that we've learned, well, then that makes me feel like everybody needs to dive in and be experts. And it's more about just being careful. But so this is a little different, but Tim and I got a new SUV about a month ago, and we had to go to our local, what do you call it, county clerk to
Hmm.
get the tags for it. We had the temporary and we had to go get the tags for it. So we went, like, let's say Monday. And the funny thing is, both Tim and I thought it was a little more expensive than we realized, but we haven't been in this county to register a car before. So we were like, well, okay. And then that night, the woman from the clerk's office called and said, "Hey, I'm so sorry I overcharged you. You can come in tomorrow if you want to, or if you want to give me your credit card over the phone, I'll be able to redo it." And I went to my purse and got my wallet, and I was like, wait a minute. I said, I think I will come down there. And she goes, "Oh, I get it. I totally get it." No, it was so specific. I even recognized her voice. And so the risk was minimal
Yeah.
that, but still, I was reminding myself that we just have to be careful and protect ourselves in all ways. And it is AI related to a degree, because there are AI generated phone calls and all kinds of things out there. So I was kind of proud of myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have experienced kind of the same thing where it's like, I think this is probably okay, but at the same time, I'm not gonna risk it.
Yeah. So what do you want to start with on? I know, and Michelle's been doing a lot of research too. She's listened to a podcast. Ha! So podcasters listen to podcasts. And I know you learned a couple of interesting things. Do you want to share any of that?
Okay, so we can start with one of the podcasts I listened to was it was AI in business podcast.
And we're going to post that.
Yes. And so, and I listened to a couple of different ones, and they talked about like how AI is being used in business currently. And they talked a lot about like the benefits and the drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks, which is kind of like what we're focusing more on today, we've talked a lot about really the positive things AI can do, is that um, so far, the trust is just not completely there. And there's good reason for that. There are, you know, the quality of AI, one of the things it was talking about, the quality of AI is related to how clean the data set is. And that's their phrase, not mine. I would have never known to use that phrase.
That sounds
But
very techy. Good job.
yes, yes. And like because of that, like if you don't know that information, it's harder to trust like what AI is generating. They also talked on one of the podcasts about AI hallucinations, which is when
I
AI
saw that in our shared note, but I was like, what is that?
where AI takes the information in and forms conclusions, but the conclusions aren't completely right. And like in picture format, one of the things that
Mm.
Amy and I noticed early on is, when we were doing AI generated photos for presentations and so forth, that sometimes it wouldn't get it quite right. Like you might have someone who has like six fingers on their hand. And
It,
so or, three
It can be
arms
just,
or
it's
something.
better, but it can be, in fact, let's put in the show notes too. Like I've shared this before when Tim turned 60 and he just turned 63 yesterday. So it's been 3 years. And Jamie made a book for him. And we had people like write a phrase about Tim and then it created an image. And some of them are just disturbingly gross because of the way they morph and then we'll do a current one. So it's come a long way, but it is still, I still get
Right.
people with 6 fingers.
Yeah, no, and so it's not exactly right. And it does that with information and data too. Like it might come up with a conclusion. I think you gave an example once when it came to some work you had put in about how
Oh, the dog food.
the advice it gave wasn't completely correct based on what you knew to be correct. And so again, it has to do with those data sets. And, we're kind of still in a place where you have to review the
Yeah.
information and kind of still check it. So trust was a big thing, and it's being used a lot, but at the same time, everybody's aware that certain parameters have to be built and that, those clean data sets, they take time to build. And so your, AI system is as good as the data sets it's drawing from.
That is so interesting. And there's a phrase in the notes that we created for today about bias in AI. Like if the data it learns from is biased, its answers might be too. And Jamie brought this up to me a while back. Like when so sometimes when I do music in my events and I'll do like who's like from what generation, sometimes I'll do like decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, and sometimes I'll do traditionalist, boomers, Gen X. And when I did traditionalists, boomers, and Gen X, there was no diversity in the pictures at all until you got up to like millennials and Gen Z. So it was like, what does that mean? So if the data is biased, so if we fed into, the World Wide Web overall about traditionalist time where we just didn't really see a lot of diversity in the media. So did it just take that out? So I started when I created pictures, I would say, create a diverse group. And I had to tell it that. So is that sort of the same thing? Or is that related, like bias and data is related to
But
what you said? Like if it,
yeah, I think that's like, perfectly related. And I think that's where some of the mistrust comes in because, to some degree, who's controlling the data set is controlling,
right,
the view of the outcome.
right. Um, I was talking to, and I won't say who, but it was a mother and a daughter a few days ago, and I was talking to them both. The mother works in a healthcare related field, and the daughter is 15. And so I did bring it up. The mother, let me give some names. Let's call her Sam, and let's call the daughter Alex, because otherwise I'm gonna be like the mother, the daughter. So Sam does virtual work in helping process like claims, like making sure that medical claims are being processed correctly for an insurance company. And Sam was telling me that she runs things through AI. But she runs like some of the different coding and things that would take her forever. But she's very clear about how she uses that data and how she, we really talked a lot about it, and it seemed very ethical, I guess, to do that because she knows exactly what she needs to do with that data when she gets it back. And then I was talking to the daughter, who do I call? Alex. This is so stupid. I don't know why I'm doing this. Anyway, I was like, well, tell me about AI in your school. Um, because I don't know if I told you this, but I was speaking at a school-based event a while back, and it was a great event, great event. There were like 800 people over a couple of days. But one piece of feedback I got, because I did the dancing thing with the decades, and I told them it was AI generated images, and somebody said I shouldn't have been allowed to put those in there because AI is so destructive in education, which was very interesting to me. But I said to Alex, she's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're not allowed to use it in essays. And the AI sites and stuff at school are blocked, but so it didn't seem, I'm sure that there are like written guidelines and strong guidelines, but she didn't seem to really think that much about it,
I
about what
I
that
bet
meant.
that varies so much from district to district
Yeah.
in terms of, who's using what. I can remember that, I mean, you and I actually did an event where, they were sharing that at one point their school district had told them that it was just part of the future and they had to incorporate it to some degree. So I think it probably just varies like so much. And, one of the things that the podcast, another thing that they were talking about was like there are so many different types of AI and what they do, like predictive versus generative. And so, predictive AI, if you're using it for something like a social media page to try to decide what ads to populate on people's page, that's pretty low risk because if you get it wrong, the person's just not going to look at the ad. Whereas if you're using it to generate new information, ideas, and so forth, like for example, if somebody was using it to try to come up with a diagnosis, like
Yeah.
if it is wrong, I mean that's high risk. So depending on where AI is being used and the amount of risk and what you're doing with it can definitely determine like how
Mm.
people feel about it and the level of really oversight, I would think that it would need.
Well, that's a good way to put it. And in the, if you all, so, this is, session 4, and on our first session we introduced it with just, it was an AI generated video about how there's been fear about change for a long time. It started, I think, with the advent of the not fear started, but the video started with, as far as technology, it began with the advent of the telephone and then the internet and social media, Y2K. um, but the thing Michelle and I have mentioned several times, and other people are recognizing, it's not going away. And we need to decide how we're going to use it and how we're going to protect ourselves. And the video that Michelle and I are doing, it's actually what, next week? Golly, I think it's next week for our local chamber. So if you are local, we'll put a link to that. And that's by local, I mean the Middle Tennessee area. It's in White House. So I'll put the link to that. But we are doing a lunch and learn and then possibly doing a half day session. And one of the things we're going to share, I'll just mention it. I said earlier we're doing it in that live, but at least want to mention it because I think it's an important point about protecting ourselves. Our friend Beth, who's been on the show before, listens to, I can't remember the preacher's name, but she listens to him regularly and watches him on YouTube. And she found something on YouTube and she said it just felt a little weird. So she got on the website of the preacher, wrote the media team, and they said, no, that is AI generated. Here is the link to the real podcast. So to me, it was obvious, but part of it was because I knew she'd already told me one of them, and she sent me both of them. And I was like, don't tell me which one is which. One of them was the preacher actually talking, and his voice was in, like, there was inflection, it was going up and down. And the other one, they're both on YouTube, was a stagnant screen with just words, and there was no real inflection in his voice. But Tim said, well, maybe it's a podcast style, and sometimes people aren't, he's not preaching, he's just talking. That was the fake one. But this was the thing that Beth and I talked about. So, for example, with Christians being concerned about, are people out there, preaching false information? But the more we pay attention and are grounded in whatever the data is, the easier it would be to notice a fake. Like even the AI generated one wasn't saying anything that was anti-biblical. So I think the goal of this person was just to rip this preacher off, which is wrong, but it wasn't to, I don't think anyway, to deceive anybody. So there's different ways people can use AI that are less than ethical. Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just knowing knowing what we're doing. And this is going to be the dumbest example. Well, maybe it's not. This is not AI, but it's about things are going to be here and things are going to change and keeping up with change. Like I have been in my office, in this office, for 3.5 years, recording the podcast, doing webinars. For 3.5 years, I have had a little tripod. So I have a light on my right, a right light on my left, and then a ring light in front of me. And the two side lights are on tripods. They stay there all the time. But sometimes I have a standing desk. So sometimes I pull it up, sometimes I put it down. And then I have this skinny little tripod and I knock it over and I have to untwist it. It's the kind where it has multiple levels to it. So I have to twist each part together and stand it up and then it falls over and then I have to put it back down for 3.5 years. And Jamie was in here with me the other day. He goes, "Why don't you get a ring light that just clamps onto the desk?" So I did. And my point is, so now it's clamped right onto my desk. It doesn't matter if I lift, if I lower, it's right here the whole time. Nothing's going to fall over. It's freed up all this space. But my point is that I didn't even think about it. Like it was taking away, it was frustrating me. It was taking time. It was doing all these things. But I didn't think, well, I wonder if there's something new because I don't think there were clamp things like this 3.5 years ago. It has a big neck on it, and it's really really cool thing. And I look at AI kind of like that too. Like what's out there that's new, like all the things we've talked about for simplifying your time, for even having conversations to bounce things off of ChatGPT, but also still, protecting yourself and doing your research. Was that dumb?
No, no. I think that was perfect. And like using it, one of the things I've since learning about it, started using it for that is, low risk, because we talk about low risk, high risk, doing shopping lists, doing shopping lists from recipes, doing to-do lists, things like that that do save me time, but at the same time, they're not high risk events that I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What do you think is the highest risk AI thing you've ever done?
The highest risk.
I don't even know either. I'm just trying to think because I use it for like when Jamie had autobiographer. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I have used it to learn information, but information that I'm not using for anything else. Like I just was curious about something, so I would ask it. Because we've talked about, you and I both, we love to learn. And so, I think it would be higher risk if I was using that information for something, but I haven't used it for anything high risk yet. And I think that is twofold. One, my this is very new to me and I'm still learning. So do I know like where that is, what I should or should not use it for based on the level that I'm familiar with it. And
Hmm.
really not having, I haven't been in a position where I've used it for work or
Yeah.
anything right now. So
Because it would be like we've talked about this several times, with Michelle's line of work, she's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And so it's probably coming more and more where it will be incorporated into healthcare. And that's definitely higher risk. So, you know, and even if when it gets implemented, it, I hope that companies do a lot of training, and have a lot of protocols to help people know how to use that data.
I imagine there'll be a lot of review of the different systems before they're put out. I know there are systems being reviewed now. And I also know that, having something that's AI generated in something that is not correct, it doesn't protect you to say, oh, it wasn't me, it was AI. If you're still putting it out there, it's you.
That's right. like who's responsible when AI gets it wrong? Well, ultimately we are, because
Right.
we're the one who decides what to do with it. Um, Gosh, that made me think of something that you just said. I don't remember what it is. Oh well. Um, in the notes that we'd written down, it's not about fear, it's about just smart curiosity. So I thought that was a good way to put it. But there were a few things that came up as we did the AI chat. Um, there's about 6, and we'll just read them off real quick
Yes.
and leave it at that. Because again, we're not tech. We don't have, Jamie has even said, like when it came to that preacher video, it is going to get harder and harder to know. And we need to protect ourselves and we need to have smart curiosity. And even we've mentioned this before about having a safe word. Like if you were to get a threatening call, um, from who you think is a family member, having a safe word. And somebody on my Teams meeting with the EAP the other day said having a safe emoji so that if something comes through via text. So, but here the goal of these things that we're about to go through is to just look at the worries and maybe give you a little bit more confidence. So these are common concerns. The first one is AI spying on me? And the truth is, if you have Siri, if you have Alexa, they're always listening. They're always in listening mode for their wake word. Like I can say Siri, but if I say, you all know, if I say it, it's going to wake it up. Hey, but with Alexa, which is in the other room, that's their wake word. Um, just be careful if that bothers you, then you can turn those functions off. You can go into your phone, you can turn off the voice activation, you can turn off the microphone. So, any thoughts about that?
I feel like that's been a thing for a long time. And I mean, it's not something, I'm not someone that bothers, but I know it does bother some people. I'm pretty boring, I feel like. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and people, I think it is a real thing where if you're talking about something for a while, you might get an ad, on Facebook. But
Or quickly these days, if it's very,
yes.
you could get an ad the next 30 seconds.
Uh-huh. Um, that doesn't bother me either, but I understand that like if we weren't so boring, it could, but you can turn that off. So you can go in your phone and turn off. Now, if you do that, I think I could be wrong, but I think you turn off all microphone function. I'm not sure that you can say for this, but not that, but maybe you can. The second thing is like what happens to my data? And this is where I don't feel comfortable really giving any advice on here. But just one of the things I know is like ChatGPT, they keep your data because it helps grow the model, but supposedly it's anonymous. And this might be something Jamie can speak to later as well. But we get all those permissions and disclaimers that we all agree to before we read them. So maybe read them. I probably won't. I'm way too trusting. Um, so next one, unless you want to pop in, any thoughts about that one?
Nope.
What if it's wrong? And this is where Michelle, you said that chatbots can hallucinate, where they just make up information. So just being careful about, I think we've really covered that, just never relying on it for really high risk situations. Or I know it was very simple, but it told me that if I wanted to feed Charlie homemade dog food, that the hamburger would be $11 a day. I'm like, no, that's not true. So just like with the pictures, I was so glad you brought up the pictures because it really is the same thing. It's
Mhm.
just not quite getting it right when it comes to the data. Um, what about deep fakes and fake news? And I think we talked a little bit about that, like not don't click. I've been getting there's a scam going around right now, and it's got some AI components to it from Easy Pass. And it was tempting to click on it because I was just in Chicago in January and I used the license plate reader. And so I did pay a couple of tolls in February, and I was like, is this still that? But eventually, so I just Googled it, and Easy Pass scam, they don't text you. Easy Pass does not text you. And so that's how we just got to protect ourselves. And I think there's probably more, but at least us telling you, make sure that you check out your sources. Um, is AI going to take our jobs? Jamie and I actually had a really interesting conversation in the car the other day, and he said it's going to get rough for a bit because there are going to be jobs. He told his sister, she works in customer service, which she's quitting. I can say that now because she gave her notice. She's been a customer service lead at the Farmer's Dog, and she loves the company, but she and her boyfriend are going to be doing some things on their own. But Jamie's been telling her, and I'm sorry if you are in customer service, I don't mean to point this out, but he's just saying over time, you know, because these people are calling in, how many calories do I need to feed my dog? My dog is gaining weight. What do I do? I think my dog might, or I'm not getting my shipment. Where is it? You can see where a lot of that can be taken over by AI. So he said it's going to get rough for a bit, but then new jobs are going to be created. But there's always that, that time where um, some people are going to lose their jobs. So that is definitely a scary thing, but it is a real thing. And that's why lifelong learning is so important. Right, Michelle?
Absolutely.
And then the last thing that I've talked about, we've both talked about a lot, is can AI replace human relationships? And I love this that we found. I love the way this is worded. AI can mimic empathy, but it can't really feel it. So it can say things that make you feel heard, which is really good, but it can't feel it. I'm not I'm not going to talk to ChatGPT over Michelle like ever. So, we've been friends for a long time.
And we
So,
just, there was just a study, I know Jamie sent us a study, and the study like indicated that it said that people who had like some use of AI, they it was a positive thing for them. But if they had large amounts, that it ended up being more of a negative. And so like that kind of shows that like human connection is still really important.
that's never going to go away.
Yeah, and there are just certain things too that AI cannot um like account for. Like if someone is really upset and not making um a lot of sense, if you know what I mean by that, like AI won't know what to do with that
Right.
because it's based on like data sets and consistent like information. So if there's inconsistencies in that, like if what it's being fed and the questions and things that are being said, if it doesn't know what to do with it, then so there's you can't necessarily take away, you know, that human connection. Plus humans can look at, you know, body language. You know, they can look at this person says they're fine. Do they look fine?
I'm wondering, as everyone knows, my life is lived in part through Big Bang Theory. And there was an episode where, Sheldon is very, very genius level and sometimes has trouble reading emotions, um, picking up on other people's struggles. And there, I think it was MIT, they said, was making a box. So he would, it would look at someone's face and then it would pop up on his phone and tell him the emotion. And so that seemed really silly when it came out, but it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know how long, but it probably will get better at reading facial expressions and all those things. But it still can't feel it.
True.
Still can't feel it. And it for me, it can help so much in relationships because I can, for example, ask for suggestions about how should I handle this, or what's a good thing to say, or
Your communication tool that you use with
yes,
it, which is really
yes.
good, right?
Yes. And, I want to throw one in here too, because we've mentioned this before. Will AI take away our creativity? And I think that that is a little more complex than I've given credence to before, because my initial response has always been no. I mean, like I use it so that I can be more creative, right? Like, um, give me 10 ideas for this and then narrow it down to this and then do this. But I think we're going to have to keep a watch on that. I don't
Mhm.
know. What do you think?
I mean, I think that it depends. It's such a fast changing technology. And like you said, right now it's built on like information that others have created, but at the same time, like it definitely, you know, has that potential as it grows. And there are some things that are kind of already doing that now, but I would say hopefully not, because there's just something about the human experience
Yeah.
and that you don't want to lose out on.
We're going to put in the show notes, AI offered to generate this for us, but I think we're going to need to like look through it because to generate like a sheet for you. But I think ultimately, so this is A through G is what we just talked about, but really asking yourself questions on a regular basis, like how am I feeling right now about my privacy? What am I doing to protect myself? Am I concerned about my data? And if I am, what can I do to protect myself? Um, what am I doing to make sure that the data I'm using is reliable? What am I doing to protect myself against deep fake and fake news? For example, Christianity, if you watch a lot of preachers, what am I doing to sort this out? Um, so is it going to take our jobs? Asking, am I prepared for what might happen in 6 months or a year or 2 years? And then, relationships. Is AI helping me connect with humans better, or how can I use it to connect with humans better? And then just looking at your creativity. If you're using a lot in your job or in your life and there's an element of creativity that you need, is it helping? Is it taking away? I think it's a personal check-in. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm excited. I'm done. How about you?
Me too.
Okay. I'm going to Dallas this afternoon, and Michelle is,
I'm going to get my oil changed. I'm off
yeah,
today, so I'm gonna get my oil
yeah,
changed.
she's off today.
I
Is
feel like
that okay to
yours is more
say?
exciting.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm always happy to go do it, but I wouldn't call it exciting. Is it okay to say that you have like a gift of a day off because you didn't?
Yes, I didn't even remember I had taken this day off, but my schedule was blocked. They
That's
had it down that
beautiful.
I was off, so I'm super excited.
Well, I am so happy for you. And I'm happy that next week we are interviewing my sister who works for we've teased this a little bit, but she works for, she's a 911 dispatcher in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are going to talk a little bit about mental health and 911. And we're going to ask her a few other little questions about, I mean, that's the specific thing. But we're just going to ask her a few other thoughts on any of the other mental health resources that 911 might refer to, and that is like a beginning of when we come back next season to really dive into mental health resources, 988, EAPs, all kinds of things.
Awesome.
Okay, well, rate, download, review, ask questions. I'm not sure I can get Jamie to record, but if not, I bet you I can at least get him to make a document for us about AI ethics, concerns, safety, all of that. So look for either him in here, maybe he's already been in here, so placed it in, or a document in the show notes. Okay, and until we're together again,
Next time,
consider
consider
yourself.
yourself.
Bye.